back to the Marketing Brief Podcast. I am your host, Brian Aquan, and this is the podcast where we briefly touch on topics across the marketing landscape. And as always, we're joined by an industry expert. Today, we're very excited to be joined by Sreedhar Peddineni. Did I get that right, Sreedhar? Fine.
That's right. You got it very, very close. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Brian. Hi, everyone. My name is Sreedhar, and I'm the founder and CEO of GTM Buddy. We're a revenue activation platform building software to help revenue teams selling to other businesses, if you will. We're a B2B company and helping the sellers to sell better, if you will, by delivering the information that they require in terms of their client engagements just in time in their workflow. So that's what we focus on. So this is a newer category that's emerging called revenue activation. That's where we're operating in. And more broadly, over the past 25 plus years now, I've been an entrepreneur. This is my third company. I started off my career back in 2000, 2001 timeframes with a company called Host Analytics that I have co-founded with my partner, Jim Evelyn, in the areas of budgeting, planning, financial consolidations. That was the early days of SaaS. Moving on-premises software to the cloud in a subscription model. Did that for the first 10 years of my entrepreneurial career. Around 2011, co-founded a company called Gainsight in customer success space. And those were early days of, every subscription-based business trying to retain the customers. How do you be proactive about that? And the birth of a function called customer success. Been through that journey for the next 10 years. That's between 2011 to 20. And 2021 is where I started this journey of building GTM Buddy. And interestingly so, nugget, Brian, for you, I know you're a seasoned marketer. And one of the problem statements that the category started, this category was called revenue enablement. Prior to that, it was called digital content management for sales, with companies like HighSpot and Seismic trying to solve for it. And the problem they were trying to solve for is, hey, we have marketing function, they produce a lot of content, and the only people who are consuming that content is marketing themselves. Reps seem to go and ask for that same content again and again and again, and they need one place for creating a content repository, if you will. And bingo, there is a birth of a category. This was early days of Google Drive. These days, you probably would organize that content in Google Drive, and search is somewhat getting better. Content platforms took birth in 2011, 12, 13 timeframes when it was real problem. And you would take all of this content. A business might have thousands of documents, if you will, presentations, PDFs, case studies, what have you, testimonial videos, and so on. They would organize all of this content, this marketing produced content, into files, folders, and so on. They would tag them. And hoping that the search would work better. And people will start using the marketing content. And the category's goal was sales and marketing alignment. This was all like the birth of a category, if you will. Now, with AI, a lot of things are changing in terms of, nobody is buying content repositories, static content repositories now. Now, the question really is about, you might have 2,000 pieces or 5,000 pieces of content that you have produced over time, but reps are not going to read all of those content. You need to deliver a subset of that information that they need in the context of a deal that they're working on. Depending on the industry, depending on the persona that they're interacting with, how do you sift through all of that content, and how do I deliver this micro content, if you will, that resonates with the prospect? So that's what we call just-in-time revenue activation, to help the reps with the right information at the right time and deliver it where they live. So that's summary of what we do, but I think that story of connecting back to marketing function.
So that's the space you work in. You guys agents out, but I love this idea of revenue activation. So how do you define revenue activation? I know you just did a little bit of that, but I would love to hear from you. What is revenue activation?
The revenue activation is the processes where you're delivering the information that a rep requires when they need it.
And it's a human rep we're talking about? A human sales?
And we are talking about human rep, and we're talking about a human rep augmented by an agent. So it's a human in the loop AI acting the role of an assistant, and an assistant where a human is not going to a chat GPT and, hey, research this account for me, research this person for me. But an agent knows who you are meeting, knows about the account, knows about the person, and knows that if you have met with that person before, hey, this is what you discussed the last time. Here are the open questions, and here is what you would want to be ready with in terms of creating a personalized deck. Earlier, we were using the standard decks that we would produce, and I would slice and dice those decks and share it with the prospects, right? Instead, you could create with AI, you could create a very personalized deck. That's for that particular person that I'm meeting. I've met with you twice. You know what? I've listened to you. And this is what you told me last time. And this is what we discussed so far. And these are the open questions. And these are the pain points that your business has. And this is how we're going to solve for it. How do you build that human connection? And if you're a rep who is meeting, like you're having back-to-back calls, 10 calls in a day, how do you find time
And
to
to show up
build that
prepared.
level of
Yeah.
human connection, if you will? Yep. And that's where the AI coming into the loop in terms of to really assist a human to prepare without putting in that effort that's they can't really put in, given
Yeah.
that they're
And what
on these back-to-back
sectors or
meetings.
what verticals have you seen the most success in to date?
So predominantly we sell to other tech companies, and predominantly we are tech companies and any company that sells
Gotcha.
complex solutions, if you will, complex products and solutions. These are not transactional sale, if you will. For example, I'm not selling a pen or something for $10 or $100 or even $1,000. But I'm selling something substantive in terms of price points, and there's a buying team. So in class typical B2B purchase these days, as you know, the buying team is growing, and even in our own sales, I've seen situations where there are 19 people involved in a buying committee. So the higher the price gets, like if you're into selling a few hundred thousands of dollars in annual subscription, it's not going to be a single person's decision. You're selling to a committee. That's the reality, right? Now, as a rep representing the vendor, how do I engage with these varying stakeholders? Every stakeholder comes in from a different function and has different pain points, different lenses with which they're evaluating you. I, as a human, how do I keep track of all of this in my head? And great reps do it, but it's not easy. It's easier said than done. And if I'm doing it all day long, then how do I keep track of all of this information? How do I process that information? That's where the role of AI
Yeah, as you're
comes in
describing
really,
it, I'd
really
almost
handy.
think of we've done this for years in customer service, right? Kind of arming our customer service representatives with that data, that information. Do you see parallels between this and like a customer service offering?
Yeah, the same kind of infrastructure is being used across the board in terms of in service and support, if you will. A lot of that used to be more rules-based systems, or somebody calls me and I look up for that client information, and if I need to look up the process, I look up elsewhere and do a lot of that. Now it's moving more towards a self-service systems. Self-service systems used to be like the IVR systems are so passe right now, but there are AI-driven systems in terms of I could speak and I'm actually talking to AI. It's able to understand, it's able to answer my question more quickly compared to dial one for this, dial two for this, then you go to the another menu system, then you go to the third menu. That can be completely eliminated in customer service. So that's a different application of AI. That's not what we do. But AI is invading multiple sectors in terms of invading probably is not the right word, helping or making inroads into
Gotcha. Yeah,
elevating a lot
but
of
it's
different
always
functions
centered
for
around the
sure.
human as in charge there. So your vision is really AI scales the human's ability to take on more calls, to close more calls, that approach. Cool.
Very well said. Yes. So AI as a so if you look at a lot of the companies right now, the zero interest rate policy is behind us. Inflation rates are going up. Growth at any cost is behind us. You're in California, the tech ecosystem, free flowing funding and all of that's behind us. Now everybody is looking at doing more with less is the new mantra. That's the North Star for everybody. So the problem that we're trying to solve is how do you increase the capacity of your existing team to do more without overworking them, without killing them with work. And that's where smart and
Yeah.
intelligent, informed use of AI comes into
And how do
play.
you compete, right? And how do you compete with other businesses that are also using AI to scale their workforce?
Yep. So, and given that AI is where it is right now in terms of there's such a dramatic variety in terms of the AI usage, you go and ask a typical technology business, if you will, or using AI,
Right.
we're
To say
hard pressed to
yes,
find
yes.
anybody who says that we don't use AI. But how are you using AI? Then you start peeling the onion. Then you start getting into the detail in terms of, okay, if you were to poll your a 1,000 people company, are all 1,000 people using AI equally efficiently? Answer is a clear no. It would never be. That's idealistic scenario. But even then, if you as a company, or have you standardized on AI systems, AI workflows, if you will, you start getting into okay, the many hands would go down, and how critical are these business processes? How are people using AI? The common answer that we get is that You know what? I use AI every day. I use ChatGPT. You know what? I stopped going to Google. Any question that I have, I ask ChatGPT and it gives me an answer. Or I'm writing an email. I want it to be a bit more polished. So I just ask Claude or a ChatGPT or a Gemini, and it gives me an improved version or more polished version of my email. These are like everybody's using them. AI for that. But the question of, you talked about customer service and I talked about revenue use cases. How many companies are there at that level of maturity in terms of instrumenting AI systems and
Mhm.
agents to actually get this done?
Yeah.
That's where the gap is right now. So the gap between AI haves and have-nots, it's not as much having access to tools, but adoption. There's a big gap that we see in terms of AI leaders and
Yeah. And the way
people
I've
who are
talked about it
still
on this
catching up.
podcast is it's somewhere between AI as a calculator, right? Like a tool that you need someone to use, all the way to infrastructure, right? It is the backbone of how you work, which just sounds like you're more towards the infrastructure side. Yeah.
Mhm. Yep, yep. So it's interesting. So I talk about this in many events that I participate in and so on. Since I'm in technology industry, we live and breathe AI because we have to, given the extent of changes that are happening and so on. So a lot of times we think about, okay, what are the AI tools that we are building for others to use? As a product company building software products, we want others to use our AI native products and services that improve their processes internally. But equally importantly, what I'm realizing is that it's equally important for me as the CEO of the company to think about how are we using AI internally for our business processes, for our own financial planning, for example, or for our marketing, in our sales process, in our customer success process, and so on. And both are not the same. One is about building a product that other people will use. The other is about using AI more thoughtfully to increase the capacity of the output. So this is what we talk about. We have tripled in revenue in the past year, and our headcount has not grown. And the goal and the challenge that we're looking
Yeah.
at, can we repeat that feat this
That
year?
makes sense. Well, I'd love to always ask my guests if there's something they're excited about. This can obviously be in your professional capacity or in your personal life, but what's something you're excited about right now as we sit in the middle of 2026?
So I'm just excited about it's almost like I'm building a company and I'm also back in school in terms of learning. So I'm in my 50s now and I've been around for some time, but the time seems so very different now with AI, and I think a lot of people are still catching up based on my observation of things. But the pace of change is something that I've never seen. So it's almost like for someone who is technically inclined and inclined about some things like this, it's like living in a wonderland right now.
That's great.
So I'm super excited about that. And in the same token, I'm also scared by it in terms of, in the long term disruption that it can cause to employment. And I have two boys who are entering workforce right now. What does it mean for them 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line? I don't know the answers to that. And I worry about it sometimes, but you know what? By worrying, I'm not going to change anything. It's not in my control. So just do the best in terms of, learn and have the technology on your
Yeah.
side.
I
Don't
I
be
think
left
that's where I
behind.
land as well.
So,
I think AI's got a brand problem right now, just as a general thing of how people feel, that they feel negatively towards it. That doesn't mean that the tools that they use or their daily interactions don't have utility, because I think they really do. They're just trying to find what
mhm,
feels good to them, what impacts their work life, what impacts their personal life. But I think the one thing that at least marketers and people in business know is that you can't put your head in the sand, right? This happened with digital media coming in. This happened with mobile.
mhm.
You can't just turn away, right? It's happening. So you have to learn it and be part of it and then figure out, how does it work for you?
Yep. That's the
Yeah,
$1,000,000 question. How do you
I
get it to
agree.
work for you?
Well, thank you so much for joining
Yep.
us, Sridhar. It was great to have you on the Marketing Brief podcast. This has been a brief conversation with Sridhar. We really enjoyed having you part of this. And to all the listeners out there, stay curious.